Hi. Pretend this is on my shirt. I don't want to ruin this gorgeous shirt, whatever. But it says Loki. It's the President Loki pin. Anyway, I want to talk about what has happened so far in season 2 of Loki. I'm gonna try to be brief. I already tried filming this video, and I got 10 minutes in and was only on like episode 2. So I'm gonna try again. Basically, I just want to talk about like kind of the end of episode 4. That's up to this point. Whenever you're watching this, season 4 came out like 2 days ago. So because the end of episode 4 was like definitely like the turning point of the season. So I'm glad I waited until the end of episode 4 because I don't know what's gonna happen in 5 and 6, but it's gonna be crazy. So yeah. Basically I'm gonna talk about kind of like what's happening this season, what the motives are, what's going on. Yeah. So first I want to start off by saying that the ending of season 1 was great. It was such an ominous cliffhanger, like genuinely scary. I have a video of my reaction to it and I was genuinely like spooked. But they did so well in this season of like keeping that, like not completely retconning that, but also not making it so that like everything that happened in season 1 was for nothing, which I love. Basically, the whole thing that happened at the end of season 1, no one like remembered Loki, and he saw that like Kang was now like in statues and he was like everywhere in the TVA. But it turns out that was just like in the past, but then Loki's like time glitching through time. And so it turns out like that was just in the past, so, like no one knew him, but he comes back to the present and everything's normal and like they know him, and so they're able to figure it out, and so it's still like everything's like good. Like I loved how they did that. Basically this season the main like plot things is that there's a lot of like the timeline of the TVA, which is the TVA is essentially supposed to be like a timeless place where like there is no like beginning or end or like time, like it's outside of time is what they keep saying. But they've introduced this idea of like that's like there is a past to the TVA, you know what I mean? And I think that's really cool because the concept of the TVA being outside of time like never made sense to me. So I like what they're doing with it. Basically, they've introduced the idea that like Kang is like the huge villain of this saga of the MCU. And so I love all the development they're doing with it in Loki. Basically, they're making it so that he like created the TVA in the past. And so he used to be like, you know, he was everywhere. He was like in statues, again, all this stuff. And so that's where Loki was like taken to originally and why no one knew him, because it was like way in the past. But then he like gets back to the present, in which, you know, the present at some point they switched to like, I don't want to say worshiping, but like believing in the timekeepers as like the leaders of the TVA, not Kang. I don't know. That part still confuses me. I don't know what the time, like when the timekeepers came into play. I don't know, but that's basically the thing. So like, there's a lot of TVA lore happening, and then also, so basically, the whole episode 1. First of all, they introduce Ouroboros, who is played by Ki Kwan. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I can't talk, but he plays Ouroboros. Like I love him. Like everyone loves him. He's like America's sweetheart. He's so like he's I can't. He brings so much to the season. I love like the casting of Loki. They cast such great actors, truly. So yeah. Ouroboros is here and he's kind of like helping Mobius and Loki figure out how to help his time jumping situation. And so basically he's like, you have to like go out and you have to like prune yourself essentially. I actually don't remember what happened. He like, I know that he pruned himself, but don't remember how he like got back. Did the episode just end then? I really don't remember. But basically, he's like, you have to go out, like, I don't remember what it's called, but it's this room and then there's like a plank and you walk out into like the timeline. And so he's like, you have to prune yourself, and it's like excruciating. And so that's sort of what the whole episode 1 is about. It's about getting Loki like back into the present. And then towards the end of the episode, there's a scene where like Loki's there, he's in this hallway and he sees this elevator and it's like opening, and then it's Sylvie, who we had not seen at all in season 2. And so Sylvie's back and she has a great haircut. May I just say. Sylvie's back and she's like, there you are. And then Loki gets pruned, and I'm pretty sure that's the end of episode 1. I don't remember where it ends. But we're like, who pruned him? What's going on? Oh my god. Sylvie's back. All this stuff. And then there's a mid-credit scene of that episode where it shows Sylvie showing up on some random branch of the timeline, walking into, it's like in the 70s, and she walks into McDonald's and she just like gets a job at McDonald's, which I love her arc in the season, because like I guess there's never been a season 2 to a Marvel show, like MCU show at this point. So we haven't really seen how they like I don't like characters over more than one season. Like Sylvie just feels like she's exactly like, I don't know how to explain it, because like obviously she's the same character, but like everything she does in season 2 makes so much sense for her character, and I love that like her motives didn't really change. She doesn't really have any new like stuff she wants to do, I guess. Like she's still just trying to, first of all, get away from the TVA. That's like her main goal, and that was her main goal in season 1 as well. She's trying to like get out of the TVA and destroy the TVA. And also she wants to destroy Kang, which is like her whole thing in season 1 too. And so I just love that she's just like sticking with it, because I love her. So yeah. And she's just like working at McDonald's chilling. And I love that for her. And so then episode 2, I should say in episode 1, they introduce this character named X5, which isn't really that important in episode 1, but he's there. In episode 2, however, X5 comes into more of play. So basically, he is like a TVA dude, but in episode 2, we see him living outside the TVA, like on the timeline, and he's like this movie star named Brad, and he's like in this movie, and he's like all fancy, and he's like in London and all this stuff. And basically, he knows something about where Sylvie is. And so Loki, because why are they trying to find Sylvie? I guess just because they need to find Sylvie, don't they? But nope, I got it. Wait, what am I just saying? They're trying to find him. He knows something about Sylvie, and so they go into his timeline, and they basically just like chase him down, because he doesn't want to go back to the TVA. He wants to stay on the timeline because he's like a movie star and he's doing all this great stuff. And so they track him down, they take him back to the TVA, they essentially like torture him a little bit, and then they find out what they need to know about Sylvie. They go to Sylvie's timeline, and she's like, I can't believe you're back again. I'm just trying to get out of the TVA. And then Brad is like, he knows something and he's not telling them. And then he basically drops the info that like all the timelines are about to be bombed, and so they need to get back to the TVA so that they don't die. And so they do go back to the TVA, and basically episode 2 ends with a bunch of timelines being bombed, which essentially means that like entire realities and like universes are just like, all those people are just like dead. So like ton of people died, like ton, like it's so, the end of episode 2 is actually so crazy, because I feel like that's insane, but I can't like grasp the like how important, like it, I don't know, just something about an event like that that feels like end game level. Like that should be like level out, like the snap just being like thrown at the end of episode 2 of Loki, is I'm like, what is going on? So I don't really know. Like I know, but that's just wild. So yeah, there's that, and then So basically, timelines are bombed. Episode 3, we come in, and there's this whole thing with Ravonna Renslayer, who was in season 1, obviously. She was like previously like the leader of the TVA, like under the Timekeepers. She was like the president, I guess. You could equivocate her to that. I don't know if that's the right word. But then in episode 3, she is working with Miss Minutes to do something. She wants to like get control back over the TVA or something, and like whatever. And so she has to do this like event or whatever, which basically puts into motion Victor Timely, who is a variant of Kang the Conqueror. So basically, she goes to some point in time and drops the TVA handbook into his house, and he gets it, and that like sparks his whole thing of like creating the TVA kind of. And so then she like jumps, her and Miss Minutes, they jump to later in the future, to when he's like, that was like when he was a kid, and then they jump to like later when he's an adult, and they're trying to like talk to him and like, you know, like whatever. But Mobius and Loki, you know, they can like track this on their TemPads, and so they're trying to like stop her and like all this stuff, because Ravonna Renslayer is just like off the rails. And so they're trying to go in and save her, and then they're like in this, they're like trying to save the timeline, and then they see Victor Timely, who looks like Kang the Conqueror, and Loki's like, that's he who remains, and Mobius is like, oh my god. And Sylvie's there too, and there's this whole thing where Sylvie's trying to kill him because she wants to kill all the variants of Kang the Conqueror, and Loki's like, no, we need him because Victor is the only one who, he's the only one who can do something. They're like, the timelines are basically like all dying, and so he's the only one that can fix it or something. And so Loki's like, we need this or everyone's gonna die. And so Sylvie's like, okay. There's also this whole other thing with like Victor, like Miss Minutes is flirting with him, and then like Ravonna's flirting with him, and there's so much happening. But essentially in the end of the episode, actually, Sylvie she prunes Renslayer and sends her to the end of time. So she's like out of our hair now. Yeah, that's episode 3. Basically, they get Victor Timely and they take him to the TVA, and Renslayer's out of the picture now. And so we go, well, is she? She's back in episode 4. I don't know what's happening. I'm gonna try to do this quick. Episode 4, basically, Victor Timely's in the TVA. He's all confused because he's from like the 1800s, and he's like, what's happening? Why are we in like the future? There's like stuff flying. He's confused. And basically, they're like, we need this machine to help save the timelines. He comes up with the machine. It's this whole thing. And then Brad turns super evil, and he like literally kills like a room of people. It's the craziest thing. They don't actually show it on screen, but it's crazy. It's crazy. Like I was sitting right here watching it on Thursday, and I was like I was truly shook. So yeah, that was crazy. Brad's super evil now, and then there's this whole thing where like they're like, Renslayer and Miss Minutes are in the TVA and they need to stop them, and so they like reset the TVA. So Miss Minutes is dead, but right before she like dies or whatever, goes offline, she just goes to Victor Timely and she's like, you will never be him, referring to like he who remains, which is really spooky. And then basically at the end of the episode, they send Victor Timely, I guess before that, in episode 1, when Loki gets pruned and it like saves him from the time jumping thing, in this episode they bring it back, and like the Loki in episode 4 is the one who prunes episode 1 Loki. Should mention that was cool. And so basically at the end of this episode, Victor Timely is like, okay, I volunteer to be the one to go out in the spacesuit and like go out and risk my life to save the timeline or whatever. And they're like, okay, we got this, it's gonna work. and he walks out, and then literally immediately after he walks out, he dies. And so they're like, because the timeline's like literally about to implode, and it does. And so the end of episode 4 is like literally them like dying. Like everyone dies. Like everyone. like literally everybody ever. So don't know how they're gonna come back from that in episode 5 and 6. It's a really good question. Because we literally like watched it explode. Like the timeline imploded and like exploded out into the TVA, and they all like got like hit with like fire and like literally died. So yeah, that's like the plot. Let's get into the characters. Loki, I mean, there's not really, honestly, the only character I really gotta talk about is Mobius. Because I kind of already talked about Sylvie. You know, I love her arc of like still just wanting to like have her place on the timeline, because she was taken to the TVA when she was like 8 years old for like no reason. She did nothing wrong, but it was still seen as like her messing up the timeline, having to be taken in. And so I support her 100%. I don't support her and Loki together, just because I just don't think it's necessary. Like, I'd rather no one be together. Obviously, I support Loki and Mobius, but like, even if like that's such a delusion and a stretch that I'm like, I would just rather no one. Like it. The thing about the shows, it's so good is that it doesn't need that. It doesn't need romance or like anything like that to like move it along or whatever. It's just good on its own. So yeah, that's my opinion. Other than them, I mean Loki, he's just him. His whole arc throughout this whole show is so great. Him becoming so much more human and like caring about things and like wanting to save people is like really great. But who I want to talk about is Mobius, because Mobius's kind of arc this season, specifically in scenes with Brad, because Brad's whole thing is that he wants to live on the timeline as a famous actor, and he keeps saying to Mobius that like Mobius is too scared to see what his real timeline life is like, because everyone at the TVA had a life on the timeline that they just like don't remember. And so Mobius is like not wanting to, and it's like sort of like Mobius never really like brings it up, but it's clear that when it's brought up it's sensitive. Like Mobius is like, I don't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to see what his actual life was like in fear that like it'll mess up, you know, his loyalty to the TVA or whatever. He just wants to keep things how they are and just stay with the TVA. But I think at some point in episode 5 and 6 we're gonna find out what Mobius's past life was, because at first, like watching episode 4, I was like, oh, they're like really kind of talking about this a lot. But then I realized like in this whole season, they're kind of bringing up Mobius's timeline life a lot. So I think it's gonna happen at some point in episode 5 and 6. And I saw a theory on TikTok that it's gonna be something like his timeline life, like his what's it called? It's not canon event. That's Spider-Verse. Whatever gets him sent to the TVA, that event, Nexus event, that's what it's called. Something about his Nexus event is gonna be something involving Loki. Like it's gonna be something, like I don't think this will be it, but like for example, like something in like the Battle of New York, which like Loki caused, or is that true? I don't know. Something Loki was doing when he was like in his villain self before like the Loki TV show, all that happened, like in the actual MCU movies timeline when he was being a villain. Something Loki did like caused something, and then like Mobius ended up like a Nexus event, and then he got sent to the TVA. And so something about like his whole life being taken from him because of Loki. That was the theory I saw on TikTok, which is not funny. But I hope that's it, because I love drama. So that's like literally the only prediction I can make for episode 5 and 6. I have no clue how they're gonna come back from episode 4, because like I'm telling you, like literally every timeline, every universe is gone. It's all gone. So I have no clue. The only other thing I'll mention that puts this show leaps and bounds above the rest is the cinematography and the set design. Like, I guess I'll start with the set design. It's so gorgeous. I guess I should also talk about the music, because the music is also something crazy. The set design, though, is like truly, I'm looking at every scene and I'm like, this is just gorgeous. Like, it has this like 70s retro office aesthetic to it all. And even the times when they're traveling through time, it's all times like before 2000 at least. It's like 1800s, 1900s, and they've all got such a like aesthetic to them. It's so visually pleasing to watch. It's lovely. And it's like looking at shows like I'm using this as I hate that I'm using this as an example, but like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which like I love that show, but even that show, like set design, like there's not an aesthetic to it, you know what I mean? But Loki has an aesthetic and I love that. So yeah, that's that. And I think the music goes along with that a lot too. The music has an aesthetic as well. This like it's kind of all got like a clock ticking effect to it, like a bit of like a tinker like clicky thing to it. It just makes it's I don't know, just there's something about the sound of it. It's also cohesive. Um it makes it like mysterious but also like dramatic, but it's also kind of like chill. That doesn't make sense at all. But you know what I mean? And it's great. Um, I will say I haven't noticed, like I know in season one there was like a whole scene where they were like pruning people to holding out for a hero. And I remember at the end of episode 3, whatever, the Lamentus episode, whatever. I think that was episode 3. I don't know. Yeah, that was episode 3. At the end, the credits song was something by Brenda. Oh my god, what's her name? But it was like, if you love me, really love me, let it happen. It was that song or either someone by that artist. I don't remember. But there were like songs that were actual songs in season 1 that I like remember and were like part of the vibe. I haven't noticed that in season 2, but I'm like kind of bad about it. There was one song in season 2, I mean like in episode 4, when he was in the hallway when the elevator was about to open. That was really good. And I don't know what it was called, but like I often listen to the Loki soundtrack, just like the instrumentals, because it's good. And then the cinematography, so good. Specifically, there was like this one scene where it was like the whole group of them. It was like Loki, Mobius, Sylvie, Casey, Ouroboros, I think B15 was there, and Victor Timely was there, and they were all in the room and they were trying to figure it out, and they were all like babbling back and forth to each other, but the camera was just on Victor Timely as he like walked around the machine, and you could see him like figuring something out. But it was so just like scenes like that, I'm just like, it's so gorgeous because like you can see he's like processing something, he's figuring out how to fix it, and he comes up with a solution as everyone's like babbling and trying to figure it out. It's really good. And it's not just that, like there's a lot of at the beginning, oh yeah, at the beginning of, I don't know if it was the beginning, there was like they do one shots quite often. Like it's not that often, but like more than normal. They will do a one shot, and I'm like, that is so good because like I just think like the choreography, the blocking that goes into that, it's so good, and they just put in that extra effort, and it like really pays off. Yeah, and for what it's worth, the writing's good. I mean, it always is. And the actors, first of all, Tom Hiddleston is incredible. Second of all, Owen Wilson is incredible. Third of all, Jonathan Majors is something else. Jonathan Majors plays Kang, and he essentially plays like pretty much almost a different role every time he's in something different. Like at the end of Loki season 1, he was like Kang the Conqueror. He had this whole persona to him. And then Quantum Mania, he played like a softer, but then at the end, more evil version, whatever. And then in season 2 of Loki, he's playing Victor Timely, who's like completely different. It's a whole thing, but he's really, really good at it. And so, Jonathan Majors, like, you got it. Yeah. They casted him well. And so, I think that's all I have to say about the first 4 episodes. I'm gonna make another video about 5 and 6 when they come out. But I literally, like, this is the first time in a while that I've been like, I literally can't wait for the next, like, thing. That doesn't make sense. But, like, I'm truly so interested to see how they're gonna continue it. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. I love.